25s pop up. And this is a Zoom for contest. So we will focus on that tonight. We're delighted that you're here to learn more about how to navigate in Zoom and really have a smooth contest that will be virtual and one that hopefully all of your members and guests will walk away with a great experience and want to come back. And so tonight, I just want to acknowledge some folks that are here with us. First of all, our contest coordinator, Lola Stone. Absolutely. And so she's the one that is organizing the contest. Maybe some of you area directors and division directors, she's like, hey, where's your flyer? And just your information. But thank you so much for responding to her. Great job, Lola. I also want to share with you our district chief judge, the one, the only Richard Lane. So he's the one reaching out, getting judges for all of our contests. So if you haven't responded to him, please take a minute and respond. we still need some judges, I believe. What an awesome opportunity. And I am Marquita Gardner, your program quality director, responsible for the education, the programming, and the events. I also want to recognize our awesome leader, our fearless leader, Nipa Fluid, our district director. And we just thank you all so much for being here tonight. And we are going to dive right in. We have our Division G director, Jesse Ford, who is going to share with us Zoom for contests. It's really not scary, guys. And you can do this. Jesse, let's show them how.
All right. Well, thank you, Madam Program Quality Director, and good evening, everybody. So I want to take a little bit of time, and I'm going to drop both of these handouts in the chat later this evening. So don't feel like you have to take copious notes and try to remember everything I say, because like we said, we're recording this, so you'll be able to reference it back here in a few days as soon as we get it all up on YouTube. But then also I'll drop both of the handouts in here in the chat at the end of the meeting so that you can pull them down and have them just like everybody else. But the first couple things before I start sharing my screen and walking through the handouts, I want to just talk on a couple key high notes that I want to mention. First, when you're doing a contest or preparing for a contest rather, if you're going to practice anything on Zoom, there's two big things that you want to note. One, when in doubt, refer to the script. The script, especially for the Zoom Master, is going to have a lot of different parts in it where it has a cue. And for example, when the technology check is done by the speaker, it says, you know, for the speaker to respond back to the Toastmaster, good morning or good evening, Mr. Toastmaster, as they respond. But underneath there's going to be a spot where it says for the Zoom Master to spotlight the speaker or do other functions. Those aren't going to be audible cues, but they are mentioned in the script. So it's a good idea for anybody that's looking at being a Zoom Master to read the script and know where those are at, because if you don't know it's coming, then you may be fumbling when it needs to happen. So just a heads up. The next thing is that when it comes to practice, you need for most Zoom functions at least 3 people, and one can be just a cell phone of somebody, but you need at least 3 participants on a call to practice most of the Zoom functions. When I say most of the functions, I'm talking about things like breakout rooms or spotlighting, those kind of things that are common in a contest. There's going to be, you know, a couple other things that we're going to go over tonight, and without further ado, I'll get into those. So I'm going to share my screen now, and here we go. So can everybody see it? Everybody good?
Yes.
First thing is a Zoom tutorial guide that we put together with TI that is really just a high-level basic overview that actually has a hyperlink to all the common scenarios and all the common training directly on Zoom's website. Now, this is for the people that when you have a question on how to do something, here's a quick, easy place that you can go and try to find it. Now, if you're talking about, you know, for example, your audio testing right here, you can click on it and it goes right to that section straight on the Zoom website so that you're not getting secondhand information, meaning, oh, this is what Jesse told me to do, but I don't or when I clicked on it, it didn't work quite right, or maybe it was because I'm on a Mac and he was on a Windows. I don't know. But all of those sections are easily lined out right here for you. And it's great because for all of us, especially at the club level and everything else, it's branded by Toastmasters International. So it looks all super official and great, and it has the logo up there. So feel free to share this with anybody and everybody that comes to your meetings. But going back to it real quick, it's got everything from video, how to test, screen sharing, recording, even like we're doing tonight. Ooh, look at that. It's got breakout rooms, chat, and even polls. So it's got basically every function that you're going to need to know about. But tonight, the one thing that we're going to look at is how to do contest and maybe a couple little things that might be some tips and tricks that we learned last year when it relates to contest. So I'm going to go to my next form right now. And this is the form that I put together for everybody. And like I said, I will drop this in the chat later tonight. So the first thing, when it comes to contest, everybody's asking who needs to be a host and who should be the co-host, all of those questions. When it comes to who should be the host on a line, you would think it needs to just be the one who owns the line or the district representative. It's most often, that might be the case. But in the case of a contest, it's usually a best practice to actually have the Zoom master be the host. This is so that they can actually coordinate everything that's going on, and we'll go into some of their responsibilities and why that might be easier in a little bit. But when it comes to co-host, this is where it gets a little bit confusing for people because there's going to be multiple people that hold this role and why we need them to be, have that ability. But we'll talk about that again in a little bit. But the co-host, you're going to want to make sure our very own Richard, if he shows up on your call, make him a co-host. He's going to want to make sure he can check on things. That just eliminates, the confusion right there. Also, your district chief judge, your district representative. So if Nympho or Marquita shows up on your contest, it might be a nice idea to make them a co-host. Then you're going to want to make the area director, division director, both sergeant at arms, and your contest chair. Now, if you note, I did not say, for example, for my contest, for my particular division, I've got 3 contests all scheduled on the same day. They're not at the same time, thank goodness, but they are all on the same day. Well, when it comes to each individual contest, only that respective area director during that contest will be a co-host. As soon as they're done being an actual, for their contest, we would ask that they would be removed as a co-host, and then it's switched to whoever actual area is going on. This just makes it so that that area director at the time gets to lead their contest and have the power that would be able to, take care of things. If they want, it would be at their discretion if they want to do otherwise, but I would highly encourage you, when it comes to co-host, they say with great power comes great responsibility. The least amount of people that you can have on it or with that power, it would probably just help you out. The next thing is spotlighting. So this is a new function that Zoom came out with, and this is where I want to talk, one of the things I wanted to talk about. When it comes to spotlighting, in the past, last year, when I clicked on somebody's camera, I could click spotlight. There was also add spotlight where it would put up 2 people at the same time. But one of the tricky things was when it came to moving back and forth between the contestants and the Toastmaster and things like that, I oftentimes had to, click on, the off spotlight and then re-add it to go over to the next person, add the spotlight. It just got kind of a little bit wibbly wobbly, looked kind of weird on the screen for some people. But now they have this function called replace spotlight. And the way it works is, for example, if you have a speaker that's currently giving maybe their evaluation or their international speech, as soon as they're, as they're getting probably towards the end, and this is where the Zoom master kind of has a judgment call, but you don't want to do it too early. But one of the things you can be ready to do is click on replace spotlight. And what that does is, for example, if I have Marquita spotlighted right now, and Nympha is our Toastmaster, as Marquita's wrapping up her speech, I can go over to Nympha and be ready with a replace spotlight so that as soon as Marquita wraps up her speech, I click on that replace spotlight, and in one swift move, now Nympha's back in the spotlight view. It eliminates that kind of, oh, look, I got to fumble through it a little bit. And the easy way I would say to do it from my experience is from the participants list, because this is also where it will be easy for when you have the evaluation contest. This is also where you want to see when evaluation contestants come back into the main session. Just a little, helpful hint, about spotlighting some more of those things we can maybe talk about later in the Q&A. The next thing that came up, breakout rooms. When it comes to breakout rooms, one of the things we noticed last year was, especially if you have multiple contests in the same day, sometimes and often they're on the same bridge line. So you've got several different rooms that are created at the very beginning of the contest. You've got your contestant briefing, your judges room, the chief judges room, because they like to be, special by themselves. You've also got a sequestration room, but we added in here a district room for if the district representative needs to talk about anything or pull anybody out to do anything, and then also a miscellaneous room. Now, here's the one note that I will say. If you've got multiple contests going on in the same day, and maybe you're the Zoom master for all 3 contests on a Saturday, or maybe you're not, either way, when you make the rooms, make all of them at the same time. So if you're starting the day, for example, at a 9 a.m. contest, put area, for example, in my case, 71, then the name of the room, and create all of them at the same time. Then also make area 72, 73, whatever contests are scheduled for that day. Even though it's going to look like you may have 18 different breakout rooms available at the time, the one thing that will be helpful is that when you create them, you're going to click on what's called assign manually. You're not going to do automatically or let participants choose, because then you would have, participants jumping in between rooms or anything else. But if you click on assign manually, and the reason that the Zoom master is responsible for the actual breakout rooms is because as soon as the breakout rooms are open, any of the rooms that we talked about up here, when it comes to the co-host, can then start pulling people into those respective breakout rooms or assigning them. So if the chief judge for the next contest gets on the call early, and maybe there's that possibility that they're like, hey, I'm going to start my briefing early. In the past, they would have gone up to the judge's breakout room. Well, what if you're on one contest and there's a protest, and on the next contest that's getting ready for briefing, they're trying to do a briefing at the same time? Well, now that you've made separate rooms for each of the areas and had multiple, things set up at the same time, you eliminate that confusion, because each contest can have each of their own breakout rooms and everybody can be all happy in their own respective places. Just eliminates a little bit of that confusion. And I will say also, just for an ease of peace on the Zoom master, it's kind of a nice little courtesy that if, for example, the chief judge for a contest is on the call and maybe the next chief judge jumps on, in order for the Zoom master to be able to facilitate or make sure that they keep their focus on the contest that's going on, that next chief judge, if more of their judges show up, there's not necessarily a need for the Zoom master to admit people to the call and make sure that those people are then assigned to the judge's briefing or anything else. That new chief judge for the next contest, since they're a co-host, should be able to watch the breakout room and be able to take care of those things themselves. Hopefully all of those things will just make it a little bit more seamless, and then that Zoom master can actually focus on the contest that's going on. The next thing it comes up is Sergeant at Arms. The Sergeant at Arms in this year, we have the evaluation contest. So with that, you're going to go back and remember that we have a sequestration room for the contestants. And one of the tricks that we learned last year was make sure that both of your Sergeant at Arms are a co-host. In the past, we tried different combinations of things where one person was in the main room, the other was in the sequestration room, and they were texting each other. Well, there was sometimes just a little bit of a delay in time between when that happened. But I would say, for ease of everything, if they're both a co-host, one of the new functions on Zoom is that as a co-host, you can jump between breakout rooms. So imagine that. If you've got one that stays in the main session, one that's in the sequestration room, the one that's in the main session can jump, for lack of a better term, over to the sequestration room, say, hey, Sally Toastmaster, come back with me. You're called up for the evaluation contest. And then they jump back over to the main session, and the participant or contestant can join at that same time. It just eliminates that kind of, oh, I've got to text them. And last year there was times where it was, hey, does the contestant know they need to come back yet? What's going on? And there's a little, some more awkward pause times. It just might make things flow a little bit nicer. The last thing that I want to talk about tonight is contestants. And this is one, especially for speakers and evaluators, since we're having them this year, is put for, the same way one of the timers is going to have their name listed out as timer Sally Toastmaster. It's, a nice little trick that to help out the Zoom master, put, for example, speaker 1 or speaker 2 and then their name once the speaking order has been drawn. If they need help changing their name or figuring that out, the Zoom master can kind of assist with that because they'll be able to rename the people once they understand the speaking order. But if they can, it would be great if the contestants can do it, because as we go back up here, in the same way the participants, you can get ready to spotlight people. When you search up at the top of your participants list and see, for example, SPEAK, I doubt very many people have the name Speak or starting with the word Speak, but there could be that chance. But at the end of the day, if you type that in, you'll be able to get ready as the Zoom master for when that speaker comes in to the main session from the evaluation sequestration room. The reason that would be helpful is because then as they come into the main room, you're not trying to go back and forth and, oh, you've got 60 people displayed on your Zoom and you can't figure out where they are, or you're trying to figure out, oh, I've got this person, but this person might be pinned or what's going on. If you've got it up in the participants, you can easily see right there at the top. One, you'll see that they've come into the room, and then you'll be able to easily go back to that spotlight and do the replace motion that we talked about earlier, just to make it as, hopefully as seamless as possible. But those are the kind of things that I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about tonight, and make sure, like I said, I'll be dropping this in the chat in a little bit, but I want to make sure at this time, if you guys have any particular questions, I know this was kind of run through pretty quickly, but if anybody has any questions, I guess that's where I would go from now.
Got a quick one, Jesse. This is Bobby.
Sure. What do you got, Bobby?
Spotlighting is the speaker. Do you pin the timer in order for them to be visible, or do you pin or spot? How do you do that?
So the speaker, when they come into the room and they come into the main room, or for the international contest, one of the things in the script, it's going to ask them to make sure that when they are getting ready, they, as part of the technology check, pin the actual timer. One of the things that you'll have to kind of watch for is as they've done that, or as they're getting ready and have done that, then the Zoom master makes sure, because once they've been pinned, then you can actually spotlight and make sure that they don't, you don't spotlight somebody beforehand, so that they can have time to pin. It's just kind of, you have to get into the rhythm of how it works out. And I would say this is where practicing that and finding out that kind of timing is going to be critical.
So it's their responsibility to pin their timer.
Correct. If I pin the timer, it's pinned on my screen. It's not necessarily pinned on everybody else's.
Understood. Thank you.
Good question.
Yeah, when you pin the speaker and you spotlight, where do they see the timer on their screen? Is it the whole screen?
When you spotlight, are you talking about? I'm sorry.
No, when the contestant does the pinning of the timer,
Mm-hmm.
and then the Zoom master does the spotlight, what does the contestants see on their screen?
So depending on their display settings, they should see still just their camera, but they will also see up at the top a row of people from the gallery view, if you were. And the first person pinned or the first person in that view should be the timer then, because
Okay.
they've pinned them.
Okay.
If they're, one of the things that might happen and might be a little bit easier is also, and this is where it gets into the speaker's preference, is they can go back and click on, speaker view or gallery view, just to put themselves back into a view where everybody's on. So it's kind of like speaking to an audience again. But again, it's kind of up to that contestant on how they want to view it. As long as they can see the timer, that's the big thing. And I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the other things, and a side note that I didn't put in here and that I'll mention now, is when it comes to a timer, I would say the virtual backgrounds are probably the most favorable or easy to use for a lot of people when it comes to especially a virtual contest. So with that, if you've got participants or just other, guests in the room and that are watching your contest, as the Zoom master, it may not be necessarily your responsibility, but you may want to alert your Toastmaster if you see anybody that has a background that could be confused with what the timer might be putting up. So I'll give you an example. So if I take my video right now and it's the blue background and it looks all nice and cool, but I change it to this background right here, well, it's cool, it's Star Wars, I like it, maybe some other people like it, but it's red. And there could be a possibility that it confuses one of the speakers because they think I'm the timer at some point, or they see the red light or they think that's the red light. So I would highly encourage you, if anybody on your call has a background, one of the things I posted today on Facebook, and it's also available on the D25 website, is the plain blue background that is non-distracting, and it's great for both participants and contestants or just your guests in the room if they want to feel part of the team. So, Marquita, I see your hands raised.
Yes, and I want to share, does everyone see that my hand is raised and my box or tile goes right to the top and to the left? So in essence, there's also been a suggestion and a recommendation that the timer raise their hand, leave it up, and that way no one has to worry about pinning anything, right? And so the timer can be right there in the top left, and the speaker is able to see the individual. They'll see the changing of the colors on the timing lights or background, if you will. And then as long as the hand stays up, this tile or my tile, the timer's tile, will be on the top left and easily visible from the speaker. I just wanted to add that in.
Oh,
This is
and
why we're a
Jesse,
team.
I'd like to add that on the D25 contest site, I also added this background that says timer. That should help.
Nice.
And if people the timer covers up their camera, then they're not visible, but that should also help the contestant also.
Man, we're making all kinds of enhancements. I love it. Teamwork makes the dream work. Oh, yeah. You can't say inspiring without a G in it. Just saying. Jason, what do you got for us? Or Jason and Sally?
What level of Zoom account does one need to have all of these functions?
As far as what functions are we talking about specifically? Like all the breakout rooms and polls and all of that kind of good stuff?
Yes.
So,
Yes,
the
correct.
first, I can tell you, my personal account is just the first level licensed account for, I think, $14.99 or $15 a month, and I can do all of it.
Okay.
So, and I think with that also, I can have up to, I think, at least 100 people or more on a call. All of it's listed out on Zoom's website in the different levels, but I've never not been able to do anything, even all the way up through the region or otherwise, with just the first level licensed account.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Like you said, to test things, it's good to have at least 3 people logged in, to test different things.
And with those 3, a little side note with that, you can have somebody log in with their phone or call in on the line with a phone and then have 2 people that are on a actual, either an iPod or an actual desktop. As long as you have 3 people or 3 different icons or video possibilities showing up on a call, that's when you can start practicing the things. So, I mean, even if it's technically 2 people and one is on a cell phone, as long as it's 3 and Zoom thinks it's 3, you'll be able to practice the functions.
Like your own 3 devices. and clicking
You
on.
could, yeah,
Right.
you could probably
Right.
do it with your own
Yeah,
3 devices, but you know, if you're spotlighting yourself, you might get a little vain.
Well, you might get confused who you are.
Yeah, you know, am I the division director? Am I the Zoom master? Am I, no, who am I? I don't even know anymore.
So Jesse, I invited Celeste as one of our chief judges to come to this training just to kind of clarify what she might need to know in regards to the chief judge function. So we talked about the fact that we're going to have the chief judge room. We're going to also have that extra room. So when we are in a situation where we go into a protest, which room are you going to move the chief judge in with the actual judge that needs to go over what they're protesting, and then eventually have the contestant come in? So I just want to make sure we covered that.
Sure. So when it comes to that, you know, as the chief judge at the contest will be a co-host themselves, they can really pull anybody at their discretion into whichever room, so that, you know, there'll be multiple rooms open. And that's why we added the 2 extra, the miscellaneous and the district room, just in case anything should happen. But the chief judge on a contest, since there'll be a co-host on the call, they can actually pull into whichever room they feel, you know, they need to, or, you know, maybe they go into one and there's a Zoom glitch and they can't share their screen or other things. That's also why we've made sure that there's multiple rooms available for all of those things to happen.
What
But I
little,
wanted, I'm sorry, Diana, I just want to get one point across. We have a chief judge's breakout room. So just like in a physical location, we have a chief judge's room, and that's where they go, even if we're not speaking any protest to come
Right,
and play.
absolutely.
However, if the case should arise, you have the chief judge's room to have that conversation. But we will have the extra room, the miscellaneous room, should there be a need to go to an even more separate room. And I'm sorry for stepping on you, Diana, please.
no, I just, well, one thing we all need to remember, when you leave in a room though, say leave room and not leave meeting.
Right.
Yes.
Sometimes when we get a little stressed about getting back and forth, we might hit the wrong thing. So don't hit that button.
The same way, if you're a co-host, don't hit end meeting for all, you know,
Right.
by accident.
Right.
But, you know, and
And-
that's
and
the
don't
that's the
click
reason we want to limit
Yeah.
who has
and-
certain powers.
And don't click close the breakout rooms.
For sure.
All
So
right.
Donna has her hand up, Jesse.
Sure, Donna, what do you got? And then we've got one question in chat that we'll go
I
to.
get confused with the spotlighting and sharing, because there's a point in the script where you want to highlight a bunch of people, spotlight like the contestant, the Toastmaster, and I don't know, the area director or something like that. But you also want to share the certificates of participation or the awards or something like that. Is there an order you have to do it in to make it work? And can any co-host do it, or does it have to be the Zoom master, and who can share? And I get confused about that.
So I would tell you, you know, one of the things last year is the Zoom master, and presumably during, you know, for example, the contestant interviews, when you're giving the participation certificates, or even during the announcement of winners, it's probably best if the Zoom master is the one doing it. And the reason that they're also, you know, there's not necessarily a form way, it's making sure just more clearly that all of those people are getting spotlighted, and then the participation certificate is displayed. That way, you know, Diana, Mark, whoever's taking pictures of the contest can actually have the picture to get ready. And sometimes it might just take a little coordination of, hey, give me 2 seconds extra to make sure that these are all spotlighted, and then I can share my screen and put up that participation certificate. Once all of those are together, the person that's taking the pictures can take the picture and we're good. And it just kind of takes a little bit of a coordination effort.
You have to spotlight before you do a share the display. Is that correct?
I would recommend that you spotlight everybody and then do the share as the last part of it, yes. Just to make it easier. Because then you'll see all of the people spotlighted at one time, and then you can click share. It'll be the last thing that comes up, and you should still see the 4 or whoever people spotlighted, and then the share screen will be on there. if there's any confusion with it, or, that's when the Zoom master can work with the actual photographer to make sure that they're seeing correctly what needs to be taken care of for a photograph purpose.
And does if the Zoom master is doing all this, does the screen they see, is that what everybody else sees, or is there any disconnect?
It should be generally what what the rest of the audience is seeing. So if I'm, for example, right now, I haven't spotlighted anybody, and the only two people I see, Bobby and Donna, yourself, with raised hands. That should be what everybody else is seeing, other than the fact that, if they've changed their view to a gallery or speaker view, then it may only be on you currently, Donna, and the display of what I'm sharing on my screen.
Thank you.
All right.
So Bob
Bobby, yeah, did Bobby have a question?
Yes, sir.
has his hand up, Jesse.
Yes, yes.
Sure. What do you got, Bobby?
Maybe a sidebar issue, but I do not have the ability to spotlight on my Zoom.
Okay.
So I may need to
But-
update. I'm not sure. I don't have that feature. I can only pin. I cannot spotlight.
So it may be, let's do this.
We
I'm gonna stop
haven't
share.
assigned anybody else co-host capabilities at this point. So until you're issued a co-host capability, those higher functions will not show up. So once you are issued that, then there'll be more buttons at the bottom that will give you those additional capabilities.
Okay, so if I have the updated version of Zoom, I will have that ability to spotlight.
If
want
you
the-
are a co-host,
Yeah.
is what
Well,
Richard's
Well,
saying.
if I'm the Zoom master.
Correct. If you're the Zoom master on a contest, then presumably you will be a host at the, if not at the very minimum, at least a co-host, and you will have those functions.
Understood. And one last question. Everyone on the screen, if you're taking a photograph, you spotlight each person and they will fill the screen.
So when it comes to the photographs, most often, there's going to be the, announcement of winners when there's a couple people spotlighted at a time. But otherwise, the photographs are usually just taken at the discretion of the actual photographer. So they'll take pictures of everybody in the room, and maybe they'll do a or like, what is it, move the sheet over and make sure, depending on how many different cameras are displayed at a time on their view, they may need to move a little bit around, but that's up to the photographers. And I will say that Diana and Mark last year, as the two primary photographers, they handled it no problem. So I would say most of the people that are doing it know what they're doing.
Thank you. I was able
Sure.
to spotlight for someone and allow me to test it. I can spotlight. Thank you.
Hey,
Cool.
Jesse.
I'm gonna hold on one second, Diana. I'm gonna jump to Celeste and then we'll come back to you because I want to make
Yeah,
sure that we
all
also
right.
address the chat. So
Right.
Celeste is asking, how can you share two documents together, say the tally sheet and the ballot of the judge for the ballot counter? So that's going to depend on what actual device you're using, Celeste, and there's a way to split your screens, things like that. But that's really going to dive into what particular device you're using. And, without going into each device specifically, I would refer you back to the sharing screen options that are actually on the Zoom website, and they'll tell you for your particular device how to do that.
Celeste, did you see that YouTube video I sent you today? You're muted right now. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. No, I didn't get a chance. I was doing something else for another club, but
No
I'll do
problem.
that tonight later on.
No problem. You have any problems, just get with me. We'll practice, okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right.
Jesse, there was a question in the chat
Sure.
from Jason. If you could show the spotlighting and setup capabilities, please.
So if I'm currently, so if I go, let's do back to, I think I'm already sharing my screen. Good, right? Or no? Yes. So if I go and I spotlight somebody right now, this is how it's going to look for everybody. So right now for me, I can see that Marquita is spotlighted, but I have it in the gallery view. So for me, on my particular device, I see everybody still in their little screens, but at the bottom left-hand corner of Marquita is a little pin that makes it a note for me that she's actually been spotlighted, so that I can tell she's spotlighted at the same time I'm sharing. Now, if I go, for example, and do a multiple, I can add Spotlight, and now I've got Lola and Marquita at the same time. That's what we would do, for example, when we're doing the announcement of winners. Or I can, remove people at different times. That's kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier. So, but the other part about it is that when we did the replace, so if Marquita is currently the speaker and she just finished, I click over on Lola's and do replace. In one swift move, I've now replaced Lola and Marquita's taken off.
But we
Did I-
as viewers can change the view. And if we.
So you
Yeah.
as the viewers, when you go into the top right-hand corner of your screen, you should be able to click on either gallery, speaker view, or side by side. There'll be different options for you to check on your display, depending on your device that you're on, and then you'll be able to see it accordingly, depending on what view you want to actually view it in. Or change it to, rather.
I'm gonna put a
We'll take
little.
Lola off Spotlight so that she doesn't feel all nervous or anything.
Thank you.
All right. Good questions,
Richard.
everybody.
Can I say
Jason, did
something now?
Sure, what do you got, Diana?
Okay, I know I'm talking too much, but I think, and maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I think Bobby thinks that his version is keeping him from being able. Could you make him a co-host so he can see that he can have the spotlight button? Would that be too much?
All right, so Bobby, if you're still confused, what I would say is we can maybe do that offline, but
Okay.
I don't
No,
want to try
sir,
to do that in the middle
I
of
do
this
have
call.
that I do
Okay,
have that
sorry.
capability. Thank you.
Yeah.
Problem solved. Thank you very much.
There you go. Oh, well, looks like Marquita made you a co-host, so you could try it. Good job. See, there we go. Works out.
Are there any additional questions? Okay, hearing none. It sounds like all hearts may be clear. So thank you all so much for the time.
I have a
Jess-
question, Marquita.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
okay. No apology. Go ahead.
What what's the soonest that you would recommend doing a run through? As far
Sooner
as
than later.
Way before you do your contest, please. And even
okay,
do it this weekend. Carve out some time on your calendar. Set the time, get a couple of folks, maybe some of your AD teammates, some folks in your club, and practice. It will
Okay.
make a difference if you practice it. And that way, when you get to your contest, it's time for it, you'll be ready to go.
Yeah.
I would not wait, Conda.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
Conda, just a side note with that, an average script run through, just reading it and talking it out loud a little bit, takes about 45 minutes to an hour uninterrupted.
Yeah.
So if you have a Zoom master that's also trying to learn at the same time, it could take you an hour, maybe 2 hours to try to go through it. And that's
Yeah.
just kind of maybe walking through and figuring out what they're going to do. So I would encourage you, do it early and maybe even do it
Okay.
multiple times.
okay, because this is not my lane, and I said I have to be here tonight. Okay, well, thank
It's
you.
okay.
Great training.
And
Well,
Nifa put a great comment in the chat. Get your Toastmaster and your chair to run through the script too, so they get a sense of the changes and the nuances, and they recognize what needs to happen as well. I would also have a backup Zoom master person, make them a co-host. So just in case, you never know, something happens, you have someone else that can step right in and keep the show going. Okay. All
Well-
right, and Jesse put his number in the
Yeah, I
chat.
put my personal cell phone number because you guys are all family, Toastmasters. I care about you. Doesn't mean I'm going to answer right away, but I will try to get back to you guys as best as I can. But there's my email, my cell phone number, and then I've dropped both of the handouts like I discussed or gone over in the chat. So if you guys have questions, I can't be a Zoom master for every contest, but I can be here tonight. So hopefully that's a good, substitute.
Okay, and Jesse.
Donna, you got a question? One last question?
Go ahead.
maybe?
You're on mute. You're on
I've
mute.
heard in the past that people sometimes have trouble sharing. Is that still a problem, or is there a limitation, or is there a workaround, or is there any?
When it comes to problems with sharing, it's usually one of two things. Either somebody's on a phone or a different device that may not support certain things, or they haven't updated their version of Zoom to the latest version. So the way to get around that is to make sure anytime you get on a Zoom call, go up to the top left-hand corner of your screen and you should be able to check your version or click check for updates. Also, when you go into your settings, and just make sure that you're always using the most up-to-date version.
Okay. Maybe now?
Maybe.
All right. Awesome. Thank you all so much for tonight. This has been awesome. I'm pretty sure that the questions you asked, someone that will listen to this recording later will be wondering about the same thing. So thank you so much for asking the questions. It's been a great event, and we thank you for your participation and contribution. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Good night.
Good night, guys. Looking forward to your contests.
Yeah.
Stop recording. No. Chief Judge shamelessly advertising. I need some more judges. Give me a phone call.
I was gonna make you a little slide, Richard, that said, you know,
Yep.
please enjoy the music while your party is reached, AKA get your judges now.